Hi, everybody. My name is Gary Gomes. I'll be talking to you this week about Vedic astrology, a little bit about the aftermath of the election. I don't want to spend too much time and overstay my welcome on that. And I wanted to let you know as well that I'll be talking about your individual charts or your individual signs, excuse me, adding a little bit of a layer to that by discussing where the planetary nakshatras are. And also, so the nakshatras are the lunar mansions that surround the zodiacs. There are around uh, nine of these across four signs each, and they repeat in terms of their their basic nature and disposition, but they're very different individually. So you can take a nakshatra as being, let's say, this Aries as being the beginning of a birth cycle, and Revati as being the end of a life cycle. So at least that's how I view them. And they have a lot of significance in Vedic astrology, which is what we're discussing today. So I'm going to up the ante of the analysis a little bit more than I normally do. And also, I may make this recording a bit shorter uh, because I'm experiencing some discomfort and nothing serious, but just some discomfort. And I probably want to get this done as quickly and succinctly as possible, as I don't doubt you wish I would. So, if you want to contact me for lessons or a reading, uh, I can be reached at 508-525-0001. I've been a practicing Vedic astrologer for 34 years, and I've held a few different positions within the Vedic astrological community. And so I'm not going to go into my entire bio right now, but I've been around for a few years. I picked up some things I'm still learning, and that's sort of the nature of this field. You never stop learning. So without further haste or without further delay, let's look at the chart for right now. All right, so let's see if this shows up, and it hasn't. So we'll try it again. Okay. And it did show up that time, and I know because I have a little Mickey on my on the Zoom channel that lets me know where if the chart is actually visible on the screen. So as I'm doing this, we're in a full moon, almost exact full moon, to be truthful. Um, so the sun is at 29 degrees 47 minutes. The moon is at 29 degrees 30 minutes. Uh, they were exact on Friday. And so that was when you had, or they were close to exact on Friday. They were actually more exact uh, earlier today with the sun and the moon. So we have sun in at 29 degrees of Libra and the moon at 29 degrees of um, Aries. So this will be uh, this marks the end of a cycle of the um, not necessarily the Libra full moons, but essentially the eclipses um, occurring at um, in the signs they've been occurring in which they've been occurring. And the moon is at Kritika Nakshatra, which is considered to be a cutting nakshatra, and the sun is in Vishaka Nakshatra, which is considered to be a waning or a losing energy nakshatra. The moon is traditionally considered to be in Kritika, ruled by the sun, and the moon is debilitated in Vishaka Nakshatra. So, to a certain extent, this indicates a lack of clear thinking. Um, we're also seeing the end of a cycle in which Mars aspects the sun, so that would increase anger in the chart. That would make people more angry about things. However, within about a day, you're going to see much more active lying going on across both the media and the political world. Okay, so this is so I think one of the things that you have was Jupiter was aspecting Mercury, um, and Jupiter's in a nakshatra called Mrigashira, which is a Mars ruled nakshatra. Mars is in Pushimi, which is a Saturn ruled nakshatra. And Pusha is actually considered to be the most auspicious nakshatra uh, by a long shot for everything except marriage. So Pusha, you'll probably see an increase in marital tensions across the board. You'll probably see an increase in animosity across states. You'll probably see an increase in problems and partnerships overall with Mars in this nakshatra. With the moon in this nakshatra, it's easier to be critical. That's in part why you've seen a lot of negative attention focused um, on politics in the United States, especially on Trump's appointees. It's been in this nakshatra for a few days now, and you've seen people go from uh, actively or from being reticent to make a judgment to all of a sudden going full out and essentially, especially about his last three appointees. The last three he named: Matt Gaetz, Tulsi Gabbard, and RFK, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., being criticized outright as dangerous or um, undesirable or Russian assets, that kind of language coming out. Um, Now, again, I'm not even necessarily saying that any of those things are true or not. I'm just saying this is why the um, the microanalysis has increased much more strongly over the past few days than earlier. The other thing you want to keep in mind with Mars in this nakshatra is there's a certain amount of acceptance. There's anger, but there's also acceptance with Pusha nakshatra. But also because Pusha is going to be more stoic than the earlier nakshatra than Punarvasu was. So a lot of the tears should abate over the next few days. It should be a little bit, people should be a little bit calmer about it. And, and more acceptance and more about trying to figure out strategies and ways to deal with the new administration. Jupiter is in a nakshatra connected with um, action, so taking action against measures. Mercury is in Jyeshta nakshatra, which is the oldest and the wisest nakshatra in the chart. And usually, when planets are located in this nakshatra, they'll start to come up with alternative solutions or discuss things. But again, like I said, we do have to watch out because um, oh, I'm sorry, Mars Mercury aspect won't occur for a while. My apologies. But Mercury is in so the Sun Mercury combination will occur, and you'll see a lot of folks essentially buckling up and trying to defend existing government institutions as opposed to reforming them. Venus is in the nakshatra, which again is a destructive nakshatra. You won't be out of that nakshatra for another 3 to 4 days. And so essentially the drive will be for reform. The drive will be for change over, especially in courts and especially in bureaucracies. Uh, Venus and Jupiter are really the planets that rule bureaucracies overall. Saturn has a role in that as well. But at least from my experience, these are the people who are supposed to know what they're doing. And these are the expert planets. And Jupiter's in Venus's sign, and Venus is in Jupiter's sign. But they're both um, seeking to defend themselves with Jupiter and simultaneously looking to destroy existing structures with Venus in Mula Nakshatra. So it's an interesting dynamic that's going on right now. Saturn is in Satabhishak Nakshatra. It just moved direct. Um, this is, for me personally, a great relief because it's moving away from my moon position. It was moving towards it. But I think right now this will be the last time you'll see Saturn uh, go retrograde while it's in the sign Aquarius. It'll dip back into it just a little bit next year, if I recall correctly. But it's really sort of like moving away from Aquarius. It'll take a few months to do that. It'll take until March before it moves into Pisces. But this is actually a nakshatra which likes to not really depose kings, but it does. It is a nakshatra of deposed kings, so it makes it unlikely for people to hold on to their positions for very long uh, if Saturn is going direct to Satabhishak. Rahu is in I have to look at it. My apologies, I should know this by heart. Uttarabhadra Nakshatra, which can mean there's knowledge or people behind the scenes trying to pull strings to keep things as they are. And Ketu is in Hasta Nakshatra, so Ketu wants to disrupt or wants to. Hasta is essentially the nakshatra connected with fortune telling or predicting the future. So that's why you're seeing a lot of newscasters trying to predict what will happen during this particular presidency or coming up with worst case scenarios for this particular presidency. And also other people on the other side taking up worst case scenarios if things don't change. So I think this is an interesting time. But the biggest push for institutional change, I would say from this chart, is actually from Venus being in Mula Nakshatra and from Saturn being in Satabhishak. Saturn's going to be inside of Vishak Nakshatra for a few months. Uh, Jupiter will be in this sign until next June. Venus will be in this nakshatra really only for another few days. So it seems interesting, but I think a lot of the appointments will be made. But again, you can't have obstruction, you can't have delays because of Saturn aspecting the moon over the next few weeks. And also, so Saturn will aspect the moon over the next few weeks, but also because of this resistance of Jupiter going backwards in the chart. It won't stay in that position for too long. You will see some of the appointments made, and I would say I'm pretty certain all but one will be made, and even that one I think will be made under special circumstances, but because the chart we have up right now is a Rahu chart, and essentially this calls for disruption really until August 23rd of 2025. So essentially, even though this is a chart for when I'm doing the reading today, when you pull up question charts, which this is, you can read them right like regular charts. You can read them like charts which are are going to happen. Um, but again, there will be some resistance to bureaucratic change because of Jupiter in Taurus over the next few months. And you're not going to see any really strong dynamic changes, like let's say like the Department of Education being zeroed out anytime soon. That'll take a while if he in fact succeeds in doing that. So let's see now. So let's look at how this affects the world as opposed to how it affects certain uh, politics in the United States. So the moon is in Aries. It'll be in the same sign in its exalted placement by tomorrow, along with Jupiter, and actually probably by later tonight. And basically, this moon Jupiter conjunction is very good for writing, very good for communications, very good for knowledge, and for popularity. So this will make people more amenable, more agreeable, more friendly, more willing to go the extra yard in terms of compromise. Mars, now Jupiter's in a fixed sign, so again, that compromise really won't become effective until summertime. Mars is causing people around the world to essentially get really, really angry. That's not going to go away anytime soon. We can just hope that the most dangerous part of this transit is actually around May to June of next year when Mars goes over a nakshatra called Ashlesha, which can bring deceit and also some attempts at overthrowing governments. So I think this will be fascinating to watch. K2 is over here in the sixth house, some increase in diseases in the United States, some increase in war rhetoric in the United States and other countries. There'll be a lot of conflicts. A lot of spy work it looks like it's going to be negotiated over the next few months, mainly because of Mercury being in the eighth house, where a position it actually likes in the Vedic chart. And Jayasha will be trying to dig a lot of dirt out on people. Also, Venus rules celebrities. There's been a lot of celebrity gossip or or it rules entertainment, not necessarily celebrities, but it rules entertainment. And so there have been a lot of celebrity scandals coming out lately. So people, and this is consistent with Rahu going through Pisces, by the way, because Pisces are the people that we dream about or that we admire or that we idolize. Okay. So if Rahu is going through that sign, then it's going to cause. So what had happened in the 1990s was it caused the start of a lot of investigations into President Clinton, a lot of investigations into gurus and spiritual teachers, and a lot of gurus and spiritual teachers fell, including large institutional structures like the Catholic Church. So I'm not necessarily lumping gurus or spiritual teachers in with the Catholic Church, but essentially any kind of institutionalized religion, and gurus are a kind of institutionalized religion, even though they're individualized, because it's part of an old and symbolic structure. So you'll start to see more of that kind of stuff coming out over the next few weeks and months. And it'll sort of hit, I would say, a crisis point around mid-April, and also scandals about governmental officials will hit kind of a crisis point around mid-April, and they'll have ramifications for the next couple of years. So, so essentially, from this chart, we're going to have more intense efforts at reform, more effective efforts at reform. We'll also have more scandals coming out from people who are trusted, and also a continuing attempt at dethroning political leaders. Uh, One thing I had not spoken about before, I don't think in these broadcasts, was a thing called the Varnata Lagna. And the Varnata Lagna is really where the mission of the chart is, or the mission of the person is. So if we look at the Varnata Lagna, let's say in your chart, that would be your life's purpose. That would be um, your life's status, let's say. So whether or not you were meant to be a teacher or um, a manufacturer or a leader or a builder or a lawyer, or a carpenter or a plumber, et cetera, et cetera. That would be judged from the Varnata Lagna. So essentially, what kinds of activities you would be engaged in during life. And the Varnata Lagna is in Virgo, is with Ketu, so we're going to see a lot of intense critical activity over the next few months. Okay, that's what it looks like to me. So this does this does mean um, protracted negotiations. It means protracted negotiations in places like Ukraine. It means protracted um, negotiations in terms of healthcare. It means protracted negotiations in terms of the selection process for cabinet members. It means protracted negotiation processes for things like we've seen various governments around the world hitting um, hitting the wall, as it were, in terms of the level of civil unrest that's been aimed at them. So I can think of, without breaking a sweat, I can think of crises in Argentina, Brazil, Venezuela, um, France, England, Germany, uh, Poland to a certain extent, Ukraine, Italy, Russia, Japan, Australia, uh, just any of a number of countries. A lot of the African countries are going through like big efforts to either disengage from Europe, especially France, but other countries as well. You know, it's not just the former French colonies that are that are getting upset right now. It's more like a global um, epidemic of discontent, and I'm not using that ironically. It's just it's been spreading, and a lot of it has to do with finances. So, so that's where Mercury comes in. A lot of it has to do with the way the governments have been dealing um, dishonestly with people. That's where Mercury comes in as well. And also with the way the journalism has been dealing with people. So Mercury's in a sign ruled by Mars. That's another um, combination for possible deceit. And I think that a lot of folks just want their governments to be honest with them and sort of pay attention to what they want them to do and stop doing what they want to do as opposed to what the people want them to do. So this will be a very interesting time. It'll be a battle of wills in which governance will be looked at extraordinarily critically. And even when Sun moves out of its debilitation sign, that'll continue. There'll be like a spotlight on that over the next few months. So I think this is far from over. Um, Saturn's at full strength now, aspecting Mercury. Um, a lot of so we've heard recently a lot of uh, cable news networks are in major downsizing mode. Uh, Comcast wants to sell, or Comcast has put MSNBC on the shot on the auction block. They're essentially they're letting it go. You know, they don't want to keep it on anymore. It's too expensive for them, given the viewership they've gotten. In the meanwhile, you have alternative media do it, you know, like essentially YouTube and other alternative media doing pretty well, YouTube, Rumble. And you also have people like independent podcasters like Joe Rogan doing exceptionally well. And so I think that all these things working together indicate what I would think would be a kind of a massive shift, especially around mid-April, communicationally and even power-wise, even in terms of the balance of power. Now, keep in mind, these large institutions are not going to, um, and essentially the large institutions also have large corporations backing them up. So they're not going to willingly give into this. But a lot of the commercial interests have, in case you hadn't noticed, been moving over to places like YouTube. Um, I haven't checked in on Rumble that much. I don't know how much they get in terms of advertising or Vimeo, but basically the platforming or TikTok, excuse me, not TikTok, TikTok. Um, but it appears that alternative media is gaining a wider audience. Once things like this start, it never reverts to older forms of communication. With one exception, you will see it is possible to find radio talk, which is a bit more open-ended than cable news network talk, but um, that's not as much of a force for global change as quick videos are or our entertainment videos are. And I think one thing that uh, that's happened over the past few years is that the level of trust in corporate media has, this is in poll after poll after poll, the level of trust in corporate media, I won't use the term mainstream media, but corporate media has declined dramatically. Now, it's important to keep in mind that some of the YouTube channels are, do in fact have large, fairly well-financed corporations behind them. Okay, so without getting into specific names, um, some of these organizations are not mom and pop shops like I am. They have a relatively high level of investment. They look more professional than I do. But in part, that's due to some laziness on my part. And also, uh, I can excuse myself for lack of sufficient time to get my background draped the way I want to, or set up the way I want to, or my camera's working properly. So, but again, that'll change relatively soon. The Mars Sun aspect. So the over anger at government is going to calm down a little bit, but there will still be a lack of trust, I think, at least over the next couple of years. And that'll actually extend into, with K2 going into Leo after June or so, it'll extend to the current president-elect. And as a matter of fact, he does have certain significant health risks, both this year and over the next year and a half. So again, we'll have to see how this works out. It could be just health problems like a heart condition or something like that, or it could be something much more serious. But I'm not prepared to go there just yet. The other thing we can look at with this chart, I just want to throw up some country charts. Let's see if I can get the US. US chart up. So the US has K2 over Saturn. That's, or K2 passed over Saturn. See, Mars is over Mercury and Rahu, so the anger at media will not abate. We don't have any planets in the seventh house right now of the US chart. We do have Jupiter in the sixth house, so that indicates legal troubles. And we do have Saturn forcing the United States to essentially pare down or make itself leaner and more efficient. So that's pretty much consistent. Again, with the direction we're seeing taken. Again, I'm not coming out on a political side of this because there are a variety of ways that these problems can become addressed. But many nations in the world are significantly overextended, including the United States. So that can be resolved if you have good growth. That was what happened in the 80s under the Reagan administration, and again under the 90s under the Clinton administration. If you don't have good economic growth or increasingly strong economic growth, it can be dangerous for a lot of countries. And we have seen some countries show signs of not necessarily collapse, but economic hardship. Okay, so Spain comes to mind almost automatically. I'm not picking on poor Spain. Germany's showing signs of not being able to keep pace with the financial demands that are being made on it. And Germany's what, the fourth largest economy in the world. So it's um, if the fourth largest economy, and even China is having some financial growth issues. So this will be interesting to see how it resolves itself. I don't think you're going to see a global banking collapse or anything like that. I think a lot of crypto people are looking at that. And let me see if I can find a chart for crypto because I was asked to look at this. I may not. Currency of Superboy's dog, cryptocurrency. Okay, I don't have it up here. So let me give you my best analyses from what I do have, my best analysis from what I do have. Oh, back in the box. And go to the now chart again. Okay. I will have a chart for cryptocurrencies next week. Um, so since I started, the rising sign has changed. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So the chart of currencies is really, as a matter of fact, the sun has changed signs since I started. So essentially, cryptocurrencies are really they're I don't have a really high opinion of them. That's just me. That's just my inherently conservative nature. I have a master's in business administration. I tend not to look at new investments as being necessarily wise investments. But right now it looks like a relatively good time for crypto. Um, and if I'm looking at the chart, it looks like so speculation should be high this coming week. Um, however, judged on this chart, I would get out before February 14th. As a matter of fact, if I'm investing, I would get out before January 23rd. Um, and then maybe get back in around June 10th. Because these sub periods right here are kind of difficult, especially between January 23rd and February 14th. Um, I don't think it's going to be a particularly good period for cryptocurrency. I tend to favor, given the economic uncertainty we're facing right now, my major, and again, this doesn't qualify as investment advice. I'm not qualified, I'm not licensed to give that. But I would tend to go with something more conservative like gold or a defense or even pharmaceuticals than I would to recommend cryptocurrency. But this period right here, especially between January 23rd and February 14th, doesn't look favorable. And that's mainly because Mars is debilitated and you'll see some kind of shocks to the housing sector during that time as well. Um, but again, this kind of calls for the speculative market. K2 is in the fifth house. And Mercury's in the seventh house. The Lord of K2 is in the seventh house. So what you're going to see is more governments setting up cryptocurrencies, setting up currencies to compete with cryptocurrencies. And I think I think you're going to see that as early as April 15th. And I think there's going to be between January 23rd and April 16th. I wouldn't touch cryptos at all. If you can get in and out fast, God bless you. From what experience I've had with some of my clients who've invested, sometimes that's not an option. So I would encourage, just given where as Saturn's turned direct and given that Mars is weak, this is not a time to take chances, in all honesty. And I think it favors more conservative investing. And like I said, if governments create cryptocurrencies, yeah, that'll be okay. Um, and I'm not necessarily in favor of the government doing that, but I think they're going to have a better chance of success. Um, but we'll see what happens. You know, that's something, like I said, and I, any of you who've listened to me before know I'm not really a big fan of cryptocurrencies. Um, it's it could be a built-in prejudice I have. I've looked at the crypto markets. I pulled up the charts before, and let me just see, I'll try to do it first, fast. Maybe you'll be patient with me. Pick, no, I don't want crypto. Okay, so the cryptocurrencies before Bitcoin. So this has been around for a while. The concept has been around for a while. Developed between Seriously developed around 1998. Bitcoin was in 2008. So if I go back to the concept paper, see if I can get a date on it. Sorry, folks. Well, the concept dates back to 1983, actually. January 3rd, 2009. So we don't have a more precise time than that. And my camera's flashing on and off. I'm not sure why. We're gonna go 1/3/2009. Just gonna put it for 6 a.m., which is my default. And it was started in according to the Encyclopedia Britannica. Um, Client software was made available to the public. And so don't use this for investment devices. It's just a discussion. Yeah, I can't get it. Oh, I'll put it down as Tokyo, Japan. And I know there are some astrologers who are really invested in this. So not not literally, but they follow it quite closely. So let's see what we have here for a map. All right, so yeah, so Bitcoin crypto it looks like it was founded either in when the moon was in um, Aquarius or possibly if later in the day in Pisces. Given the fact that we're in a Saudi Sati, I can't in good conscience recommend investing in that unless you have a lot of money uh, to risk. So if we're looking at the current major planetary period for Bitcoin, it's in a Saturn, it's in a Saturn Mahadasha, no matter what time of day it was issued. So I'm going to say, just as a general rule, I would stay away from it for the next. I stay away from it until at least the middle of 2025. That's my analysis. That doesn't mean I'm recommending you invest or not invest. Okay, so I have to be very careful about that. Um, I'd encourage more conservative investments right now. That's, that's my gut feeling. Um, but again, this isn't investment advice. I'm not a licensed investment advisor. This is just an astrological analysis of what's going on with Bitcoin right now. Uh, you will see spikes in certain speculative markets, and Bitcoin was approved as a speculative investment, not a cash investment. Uh, about, I think it was about, I want to say 3 years ago, 3 or 4 years ago. So it can be invested in, but invested in like a commodity, not as a currency. So, all right. So again, does it have potential? From what I've seen, yeah. I mean, I'm not saying it, I'm not saying it's the devil. But we've also had sobering incidents of people like Sam Bankman-Fried, um, just bilking people left and right. There are honest crypto agents out there. It's not, um, they're not scam artists, but I think the industry's uh, too erratic for me to say, that you should buy here, you should buy then, you should buy. And like I said, I can't say that because I'm not an investment advisor. So again, I'm going to repeat that again. I'm not a licensed investment advisor. Okay, this is just for your information and entertainment only. Okay, so let's get back to the actual chart for the week. Um, Aries is in the first. So Aries is up here. A lot of focus on communication, a lot of focus on um, home life. Mars is in the fourth house. This can give some animosity in home life. Relationship life looks a little bit, relationship partners look a little bit easy to offend or easy to upset, just in general for Aries. And this particular sign has some problems with children, and also some problems with money right now. That'll pass within about 6 days, the money issues. The problems with children will last for about another month. Saturn's in the 11th house, so slow but steady gain is indicated. But again, a lot of expenses for this sign. So that hasn't changed over the past few months. For Taurus, that won't change really until, I would say, excuse me, until um, around June of next year. For Taurus, Taurus has Jupiter and Moon in the first house. Um, and this is generally a good placement for the sign, having increased optimism, increased happiness. Um, Mercury is the Lord of the second house, excuse me. It's located in the seventh. It can give increased gains through relationship partners, increased financial success. But this sign will have very little courage or very little desire to change over the next few months. K2's in the fifth house. K2 indicates again some problematic behavior with children, some issues with their behavioral preferences, and seventh house lords, I'm sorry, the sixth house lords and the eighth. That's what's called a Vipreet Raj Yoga, but basically, this indicates enemies will be defeated or conquered, probably through mistakes they make themselves. Relationship life should be strong. There'll be a lot of potential for relationship partnerships under the sign, but more so business than romantic partnerships. Saturn is aspecting the seventh house, so that's going to delay any long-term relationship activity. Rahu's in the 11th house, so it should give some short-term financial gains to this particular sign. For a Gemini, Gemini has Mercury in the sixth house along with the sun, so that indicates some fighting or arguments with people in positions of authority, some blockages to your desires, some additional effort needed, which will last really until the end of the week. At that point, around a week from now, Mercury and Venus will be in conjunction, and I think you'll see a lot of increased financial growth for this sign and also happiness in relationship life. For K2 being in fourth house, and also this sign will be a little bit angry or a little bit sad this over the next 7 to 8 months or so, or a little bit angry, a little bit more prone to anger. K2 is in the fourth house. Some worry about family members, some family members getting some help they need, but having to struggle through. And finally, towards the end of the month, family members coming out stronger and being more willing to cooperate. Saturn's in the ninth house. This is for Gemini, I'm talking about. And I think for this particular sign, so this is June 15th to July 15th. Saturn is in the ninth house, slow but steady progress, some definite fame and publicity. Again, high expenses, mainly because of children, but basically not a bad month. Also, some ability to save. For Cancer, this is July 15th through August 15th. Mars is in the first house. It tends to be kind of a good and bad planet at the same time. Bad because it's debilitated, so that will give some problems with family members, especially children, and the focus will be on children. But children will also lie to this sign, and career life will tend to be good, but will not be happy. K2's in the sign, sort of ambitious and sort of fearless. Venus is in the sixth house, Sun and Mercury are in the fifth house. So that gives increased desire for financial gain, but also increased enemies or opposition at work, especially from females. Saturn's in the eighth house. This is for Cancer. Again, we're talking Saturn's in the eighth house. This isn't necessarily bad, but it does indicate some major life changes or some major adjustments that have to be made. Rahu's in the ninth house. Again, some gain, but some dissatisfaction with workers or with bosses, excuse me. Jupiter's in the 11th house, good for financial gains. For a Leo, Leo has Mars in the 12th house, so there can be some frustration to their goals and dreams. But K2 is in the second house. If they stick with it long enough, a lot of the criticism will go away. And Sun and Mercury are in the fourth house right now. So that will mean a delay or a slowing down of the sign in terms of the speed it wants to move. Also some minor financial setbacks, The fifth house has Venus in it. It'll soon have Mercury in it, and that should give some luck in terms of success in courts or success in terms of investments that were made a long time ago. Saturn's in the eighth house, is in the seventh house. Um, Essentially, this sign wants a certain amount of stability and faithfulness in life and predictability in life. Rahu's in the eighth house. Again, this does indicate some people in the background, especially some people fighting for image, come out, and it hurts image a little bit. However, there is a lucky combination because we have Jupiter and Moon in the 10th house. So pretty much a lot of what this sign wants will be achieved this month. For Virgo, so that was for Leo, that was uh, August 15th to September 15th. Oh, sorry. I'll just leave it like that. It won't hurt the layout. For Virgo, Virgo has K2 in the first house and K is in the first house. The Lord of the first house is in the third. Some fulfillment of desires, but also some compromises or losses in order to do it. Venus is in the second, is the Lord of the second house, is placed in the fourth house. Relatively good for peacefulness or calmness around a person's life. And let's see now, after some disruption earlier this month, and we have Saturn in the sixth house, can indicate the need or the desire to trying to think of a good way to put this, to right wrongs or to correct uh, bad behavior patterns. For Rahu is in the seventh house, can indicate untrustworthy or unviable relationship partners. Jupiter and Moon are in the ninth house. That's good for financial gain, good for improved financial luck. K2 in Virgo makes this sign very, very sharp intellectually, so that's a good thing. For Libra, Libra has a Jupiter Moon conjunction in the eighth house, so career will be devoted to research and dedicated to improving life situation. And we have Jupiter, Moon, and Sun. Oh, by the way, when I start off this reading, that was the full moon chart. My apologies. That was the actual full moon chart. So that was from Friday. I had that up earlier. So Jupiter, Sun, and Mercury are in opposition to each other. Jupiter, Moon, Sun, and Mercury are in opposition to each other. So we have the two knowledge planets connected with the two rulership planets. So essentially, this will give acquisition of knowledge at some cost, some financial gain to the sign, and also some defeat of enemies and some success in career. For Venus itself is in the third house, so there's a lot of ambition to move forward or to correct any mistakes that were made. Saturn is aspecting the Sun and Mercury. This is what I would call a correcting course kind of an activity. Basically, Saturn has been moving backwards, making this sign feel like it's moving backwards financially, which it has. That's part of its role, to be honest with you. But Rahu is in the sixth house, gives good courage to the sign, good for financial gain. And Mars, as Lord of the second house, is in the 10th house of career. So this should be good for career life for this planet. Although there will be some hesitancy in going after what you truly want. For Scorpio, this is mid-October to mid-November. Sun and Mercury are in the first house, aspected by Saturn, so this restricts the sign's ability to be happy or to be content. But Venus is in the second house, and that's good for financial growth, especially from relationship partners or from business partners. Gives good gain, uh, especially through hard work, because Mars is in the ninth house, although it's debilitated. Saturn is in the fourth house, makes home life seem difficult or a bit of a strain for the sign. Rahu is in the fifth house, some problems with children being honest or being truthful with you uh, this month in particular, or this week especially. But basically, this is not a bad chart for Scorpio rising or sun or a moon. It indicates some shifts that will be favorable to you financially. Relationships and will be good, but relations with children will be a little bit difficult. For Sagittarius, Venus is in the first house. It's well placed in the first house, although it's an enemy sign to this chart, but it's still well placed. It's a benefic planet in the first house. And Jupiter and are literally exchanging signs in this chart. So Jupiter's in the sixth house along with the moon, and Venus is in the first house in Jupiter's sign. So they're exchanging places, or they're doing what's called a parivartana yoga. It's a mutual exchange, mutual reception, they would call it in Western astrology. So this indicates a lot of focus on hard work, a lot of focus on achieving material goals, even some possible windfalls for Sag. Saturn is in the third house. Again, a lot of what happens to you is going to depend on your determination, because the moon's not going to Saturn's not going to give anything away. Rahu is in the fourth house. This indicates some disruption in domestic life. Jupiter and Moon are in sixth. Mars is in the eighth. This isn't a bad combination, although you can pick partners who will not be good relationship fodder for you or relationship material for you, either business-wise or emotionally. We have Ketu in the 10th house, again, some obscurity in career, and Sun and Mercury, a lot of behind the scenes work, working to straighten out the government or relationship partners. So you will see some people fall away from government. You will see some people take lower positions in government because of this particular placement. That's for Sagittarius. For Capricorn, Capricorn has Saturn in the second house, a lot more focus on accumulating wealth and keeping it. Rahu's in the third house. It makes this sign very aggressive in terms of fulfilling its goals. Jupiter and Moon is good for financial growth and financial discipline. Mars is in the seventh house. In terms of Mars being in the seventh house, it's not particularly good for relationships. And let's see now. I just said Mars is in the seventh house. Ketu's in the ninth house, unexpected twists and turns in luck. And we have Sun and Mercury in the 11th house, giving unexpected gains, and Venus in the 12th house, giving the person an ability to save or to spend hard-earned money on recreational activities. Okay. For Aquarius, Aquarius has Saturn in the first house. That's overall not a bad placement. Varuna rules this particular nakshatra. He's an opposed king of the heavens. And at least in Hindu belief, Indra uh, is the king of the heavens right now. But basically, Varuna held that position. Now he's king of the seas. With the Rahu in the second house, there's going to be a great deal of uneasiness or dissatisfaction with money. And I think with this particular combination over here in the fourth house, it tends to indicate increased financial growth, especially on the home front. Mars in the sixth, though, is not good. It tends to make more enemies than it's worth, and especially career-wise. So people with this particular rising sign should be careful about making enemies in the workplace or even giving people a chance to dislike you. K2's in the eighth house. That indicates trying to dig to uncover secrets. And Mercury and Sun are in the 10th house. That's not a bad combination, along with Venus in the 11th. It gives good potential for career growth, although slow, and increased financial resources. For Pisces, last but very not least, Pisces has Rahu in the first house. That indicates that continued career dissatisfaction. And let's see now. Jupiter and Moon are in the third house. Too much of a desire to pull any of them away. And for this particular chart, Mars is in the fifth house. That's basically considered to be a good combination, although it is debilitated, so it will give some problems with children. A lot of signs are having problems with kids this month. And we have K2 in the seventh house, excuse me. K2 in the seventh house is generally good for unexpected benefits from relationship partners, although relationship partners can be a little bit deceptive or can even steal, so it's a bit of a mixed thing. But if they do steal or if they do become enemies, it'll work out well for your career and your personal luck. Venus is in the 10th house. That's overall good for career. Saturn's in the 12th. Doesn't mean necessarily a bad career, but it's a career that could be spent sending homeless a message. Okay, so that's it for the individual signs. Now let's see where the action is around the world in the astrocartography chart. Getting a little bit tired here, so bear with me. So, we're going to go back here, and maybe this will do what I need it to do. Yes, it does. Okay. All right. Okay, so we have Mars. Still some land scandals in Hawaii. I mean, that's and also some governmental scandals um in Alaska, it looks like from this particular chart. So Mars is debilitated. People are getting upset about what's happened with land, I think ever since the fires. And this Mars line is passing through Eastern Canada. That essentially means for Eastern Canada, increased bad weather activity and some Mercury and Jupiter line passing through essentially Washington State all the way down to San Francisco. And there's a moon line passing through here and an ascending Saturn line passing up through California. Now, this is a lot of different combinations, but essentially, to me, it implies that California and Oregon and Washington will be in the news, and not in a good way, over the next week or so. The other thing is, with this Saturn line running up through Idaho, you can see some deficits to Nevada Nevada and Idaho's economy. You can also see some changes in the economic structure. So this should be interesting. Same is true with Baja California. And we have a Rahu line passing right through the center of the country from basically from Montana down through New Mexico. Now, this is interesting because you do have some states in that part of the country that are experiencing major problems like Wyoming and New Mexico. And I think that this will cause some reform in those states over the next 2 years. There is a sun line going through right through Washington, D.C., or I'm sorry, right through New York City and right through, and there's a Mars line running through there. So this could indicate some anger, some potential violence in that city, and also in Connecticut, Connecticut, and even in Canada around the space, around Toronto space. For let me just shrink this a little bit. Let me zoom out a little bit. For yeah, and the Rahu line is going up through uh, and there's a Venus line there. So that does indicate, I would say, some sensitivity and unhappiness in both Texas, New Mexico, and all the way up to the North and South Dakota. We have a sun. So let's go back to that sun line going through. There's a sun Mars line going through um, all the way to from New York State, Vermont, all the way down to Dominican Republic and Haiti. We have heard about planes being attacked or being forbidden from landing in Haiti, and that might be what's causing it. Venezuela, it's a weakened sun line, so it's running through Peru and down into Chile. So this may indicate those governments are at risk in more suppressive activities. I think the latter is more likely. There's a descending, so there's a Mars line running through through this right here. There's a sun line running through Brazil, and it's hemmed in by a Saturn line. Yeah, so again, increased suppression of rights in those parts of the world. More of a tendency towards violence, so in Venezuela, Peru, and Chile, I think. For line running through, we have a Moon, Mercury, Jupiter line running through uh, Canada, Nova Scotia, and this really picks up over in Australia. So this is kind of a long line. So there'll be linkages between Canada and Australia in terms of how they're reacting to global circumstances. They'll be sort of linked together from this chart. And you have a Saturn line passing close to the Azores, passing to Greenland, and a Rahu line passing through Iceland. So this does indicate some trouble with governments. Denmark owns Greenland. President Trump has made some noises about wanting to buy it again. But we'll see what happens with that. That's really it's really here nor there. I don't think he wants to. The other thing is you have a Rahu line close to Western Africa, Ghana, and also close to Spain and Portugal in a Mars line. So there could be some violence because of scandals and uh, uh, in Central African Republic and all the way down to South Africa. Um, Spain, so nothing's really touching Europe, but it is surrounded by a sun and a Mars line. So that to me indicates the entire area is under some kind of um, suppression of activity or even violent activity. Let's see now. Saturn, it passes over or close to Ukraine. That does indicate the war effort will be winding down a little bit, hopefully sooner rather than later. And we have, I need to move my picture out of the way. We have a sun line running over Turkey, Egypt, Sudan, all the way down to South Africa. And this particular line goes all the way up to really through Ukraine. So this could indicate a change in leadership in all those countries. So we'll have to see what happens. The fourth line is, let me just see now, I lost my place. The Saturn line is going through Afghanistan. There's a Saturn Mercury line running through Afghanistan, Iraq. And so we'll probably hear a lot from that part of the world, Saudi Arabia, etc. And it'll probably be in the form of both propaganda and threats. Okay, so just to keep you aware, there is a possibility of government scandal, especially over um, women and also especially over flooding events in India. And that reaches up into China too. For China and for Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos, you have a Mars line running over those areas, also touches down into Malay and down into Indonesia. So that Mars line can indicate some problems with wealth, some problems with financial growth. And uh, that actually looks fairly interesting in terms of media coverage of that part of the world because it's going to be uh, very, very different than what we usually see. For China, China has a Mars line running through it, running right through Vietnam. We've already spoken about that to a certain extent, so that indicates kind of a drain on the economy. Philippines has the line Philippines has closest to it is actually let me just see now before I run out of steam entirely. There's a sun line going over Japan, touching an ascending sun line going over Japan, touching a Saturn. So that does indicate a slowdown for the economy there. And also you have a variety, these three lines we saw over here earlier coming straight over Australia that can give economic concerns. And there's a Venus line running through Melbourne, or close to Melbourne, excuse me, and close to Tasmania, and also a Saturn line. So again, this kind of indicates to me some overemphasis on luxury items and some people who have a chance to help, not really helping me, or not really helping, excuse me. So this is, and there's a Rahu line going close to New Zealand, possible other government scandals or ongoing scandals being investigated. That hits Japan as well and hits Russia as well. So those countries are not pristine by any stretch of the imagination. But I think that if we cluster these guys right here, middle Australia gets the worst of it. And we cluster these guys right here, $13,000 is all right. So that's it for this week. Let me just see if I can close this share down. All right. Right. This week's the review and what little I try to teach about Vedic astrology and also your individual chart. So let's go over to the final denouement of this particular session. We're at 850 plus subscribers, which is great. But we need a lot more than that. So if you can help me out by subscribing, liking, commenting, I really appreciate it. I love you all. I thank you all for watching this. Anyway, I did ramble on a bit longer than I intended to, but I guess it probably had to have been said. And I wish you all the best of luck in the next week. Don't forget, like, share, and subscribe, and comment. Comments are very important to YouTube. Okay. So that having been said, I'll keep on doing this even if I'm not monetized, so don't worry. Because I actually like doing it, and I'd actually like to expand to giving Vedic astrology lessons in this format over time. Not too much because I don't want to give away the store for free, but enough so you can understand a little better how the planets work. And that'll be it for this week. Thanks again for watching. I hope I didn't put you to sleep. And continue to watch and continue to prosper and continue to do well in your lives. There's still a lot of opportunities out there for everybody. Okay? All right. Namaste and thank you so, so much. And I will be announcing some new partners coming up over the next couple of months, but things are still in development. Okay? All right. Bye-bye, everyone. God bless you and thank you. And I love you all.